Welcome back to Speak Out, Stand Out. I'm Elizabeth Green, and today's guest is Dr. Kate Lund. Dr. Kate is an author, a psychologist, and a mom, and she's here today. She's going to talk with us about how to help our kids manage fear of failure and from avoiding the comparison trap that we can fall into sometimes when it comes to kids. So, Dr. Kate, thanks so much for being here, first and foremost.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, what gets you to this point in life where helping parents be better parents for our children is your mission in life? How did you get there?
Yeah, so it actually goes way back, and I'll tell the story really quickly. I was diagnosed with this medical condition when I was 4 called hydrocephalus, and it's kind of a serious situation. I was in the hospital a lot, coming in and out of the hospital to have this shunt, which circulates the cerebral spinal fluid for one who has hydrocephalus, and it is a great thing because it manages the condition, but it's not a great thing because they break, particularly in childhood. So
Oh,
there was a lot of time in and out of the hospital, looking and feeling different, coming back to school with like half a head of shaved hair, needing to really figure out how to move forward despite the challenges. And I had a really strong support system. My parents really helped me to see the kid I was as opposed to the condition I had and sort of helped me
yeah.
focus on that piece of myself. Obviously, the condition had to be managed, and that was a big thing that was going on. But what was there beyond that, and how to help me focus on those things, the things I could do as opposed to things I couldn't do. And that really kind of formed my foundation. I really believe formed my interest in understanding people, understanding how we overcome challenge. And so, I just was drawn to those types of areas in school all the way through. Went on to get my doctorate post college after a short stint working in PR and communications in Washington and Boston. But I'm convinced that those early years, those formative experiences, are the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. And what an amazing thing that it was obviously a terrible situation to grow up in and, to have to deal with that of being in and out of the hospital and all that. But to take something like that and it turn out to be a positive for your life, that's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, I'm very, very fortunate in terms of how it kind of the trajectory that I found myself on and what I've been able to do with it. Absolutely.
All right. So when you work with people or like our listeners today, are we talking to parents who have kids who have illnesses or major things like that in their lives that are not preventing them from moving forward, but other challenges? Or is this conversation really for any parent because all kids have challenges in one way or the other?
Yes, it's for any
Okay.
parent. Because all of our kids, all of us are going to have challenges day in, day out. And so yeah, I work with parents across the domains of, they have kids of all kinds, all different situations and goals and dreams and all of it. So yes, it's for everybody.
Gotcha. Okay. So I was really drawn to the idea of talking about fear of failure
Mm.
because I can very much see this in one of my boys. I have two boys and they're complete opposites. And one is just he if he wants to do it, he's going to do it. There's no stopping him. He doesn't think things through all the time. And then my younger son is a lot more reserved and it it overthinks things sometimes. And I see that in him that if he doesn't think that he is going to be able to do it, he won't try. And
Mm.
so that's why I was really interested in this conversation for me personally, because I want to help him to, to have more confidence in himself. But that is such a big thing. Like fear of failure, I think every person, every human being has experienced that feeling at some point in their lives, right? How do we take that concept and contextualize it so that we can help our kids through it if we're seeing that in them?
Yeah, 100%. And I love how you describe your boys as very different, because I have twins and they also are extremely different. One of
Yeah.
them will, I think, as well hold himself back because he's afraid to fail. He's afraid to not succeed at the same level as his brother, right? And so it's a fine line that we have to draw. And it's so hard because the first thing as parents we really want to try to do is help our kids to appreciate their own unique context, help them to build an awareness of their skills and their strengths and how those can help them to compensate for relative challenges that, again, we all are going to have relative challenges. And so really understanding themselves from the inside out, which comes as a result of an authentic connection with us, their parents, right? And helping them to see that we all have things that we're afraid to try, or it might take us a while to take that first step forward, that sort of thing. And I find that authentic conversations in a developmentally appropriate way with our kids about challenges that we've had, whether it be being afraid to take that first step forward, or whether getting up in front of the class was hard, giving a presentation or what have you. If they see us as having had similar challenges earlier in our lives, like I can share tons of experiences with my boys about, I was terrified of speaking in front of the class,
Yeah.
terrified. And
Yep.
I've got some stories about that because my school was very much like public speaking focused. And starting in like fourth grade, we had to memorize a poem and present
Yeah.
it in front of the class. And we were like graded and judged and the whole thing. And it was horrific, right? And then there
Yep.
was the point when I was a nun in The Sound of Music, and I had to sing 3 lines. And right before I sang the lines, my habit fell off. And I walked out onto the stage, and everyone was erupted in laughter. And I think they were just laughing at all the nuns walking out on stage, but I was convinced they were laughing at me.
Oh, yeah.
So it was quite a thing. And so I think that, in an open and authentic way, in a way that makes sense for our kids, wherever they are developmentally, to share experiences like that is very powerful. Um, but it's really helping them to take that first step forward and to see that we're not always going to succeed the first time out of the gate. There will be things that we're not going to, goals that we're not going to achieve. But how can we try again? What's another angle that we might be able to, approach this from the next time? And I think kind of helping them to see all of those realities is really, really important.
Yeah. And so we're not necessarily taking away the fear of failure. We're helping them understand that failure is inevitable in life, and it's just something that everybody faces at different points and different things.
Exactly. And that fear is something that we're going to experience as well. And that,
Yeah.
yes, we're not wiping it out because that's really not possible. We're
Right.
helping them to navigate through it in a way that makes sense for them and helps them desensitize to those feelings of fear and apprehension the next time.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do with public speaking, like you were talking about. Most people are terrified of it, but you have to. The more you do it, I like the way that you phrase that, because I always say the more you do it, the easier it gets. But there is something that's actually happening inside with that fear, and like desensitizing it, I think is a great way to put it.
Yes.
What do you say to the parents of teenagers who are like, my kid? Anytime I try to relate to them and tell them, well, I went through this, they say, you just don't get it, mom. You don't get it, mom. Things are different today, mom. What do you say to that parent? How do we have those authentic conversations in a way that's beneficial for them, that they don't just brush it off of, oh, that's just mom, she doesn't understand.
Yeah, and blow you off. Exactly. Well, the first thing is trying to really understand what their experience is. So never come at it from the perspective of, oh, right, right, I get it. Well, my experience, not coming at it from that direction, but really taking the time to connect with them, whether that's through, conversation or just sitting quietly until they're ready to open up. But you really want to give them the idea. You want to show them that you care about their experience, and you want to understand the situation from their perspective, from the inside out. And then, when it feels appropriate, kind of weave in aspects of your own experience, because we have to keep in mind that regardless of whether the situation might have some similarities, all experiences are different. So keeping that piece in mind. So it's got to be kind of on a case by case, how it seems to fit, and that might be different from morning to evening or one
Yeah.
child to the next child. There's never gonna be a one size fits all. So you've got to kind of be really practicing awareness, practicing active listening skills as you're entering into these kinds of conversations.
Yeah. And also, I imagine, one of the things we're talking about today is avoiding the comparison trap. But I could also imagine how sometimes they could take it the wrong way if we're saying, well, I did it. You can do it too.
Right.
Like that's not
Yeah.
necessarily a motivator that can also,
Yeah.
that could diminish their, what they're feeling about it. Like, well, I did it. Go do it. You know what I mean? Like that might be the way
Yeah.
they're hearing it, which is not what we mean.
Right. Definitely not what we mean, and really helping them to see that, all of our experiences are different. We're coming from different places, different kind of levels of competency, all these things, different fears, different ability to kind of manage through those fears. So definitely not a simple, hmm, I did it. So get out there and do it. That's
Yeah.
not, you want to have a much more nuanced conversation around it all where you're really taking in their experience and their perception of their experience and their roadblocks, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
it's a much more nuanced conversation than that.
And so kind of sliding into the comparison aspect, I'm sure, you probably have had a lot of experience with this with having twins. Siblings are always going to feel like, oh, well, he's the favorite or she gets away with everything. I imagine, I don't have twins and I'm not a twin, but I imagine it's amplified in a twin scenario. So how do parents avoid making their kids feel that comparison at times? Well, Sam is acing math. Why aren't you trying harder? Like, I mean, hopefully we're not saying those things, but that might be what the kid is feeling. So how do we avoid that?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's such an important thing not to do that, not to compare our kids, particularly our twins, who are really most likely coming at the world with very different skill sets, approaches. I've got one of my boys is extremely academic, has aced the classroom since, he was in pre kindergarten. The other one, many more challenges, academically speaking. And it's been a question of really embracing who each boy is. His strengths, the one who's so academic has his own set of challenges, in different areas. But really helping the one who perhaps isn't as academic to embrace his strengths in other areas and to really give him the sense that we understand that some of these things are hard, but what can you do to navigate the challenges, circumvent them using your strengths, that sort of thing. So, taking a very much of an individualized approach towards fostering each child's, whether they're siblings or twins, each child's potential within their own unique context is the most important thing that we can do as parents.
And I imagine that a lot of these conversations are not held together, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
individual,
Yeah.
conversations with the child about their challenges and things.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And, just giving, for us, giving our son who has those academic challenges a really strong foundation in with tools and strategies to navigate those challenges that then he's able to internalize and use moving forward, right? Because we're not going to be able to go in there and solve the challenges for him or do the work
Right.
for him. You have to help him to figure out his own set of strategies, his own set of his own approach to using the tools that he has. And so doing that in a very individualized way and helping his brother on the other side with the challenges that he has in the same exact way. And so these principles are really important because they're fostering authentic connection. They're fostering a belief in self for each child to move forward using their strengths. Everyone's going to have different strengths. Everyone's going to have different challenges. And how can we help each child to move forward using those strengths to compensate for the challenges? Is going to build confidence. It's going to build courage, and it's going to make things that feel hard, feel impossible, more doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with, as a mom of two boys, I see their differences and all the time. But with twins, I have a very good friend who has twin daughters, and so I have to tell myself just because they look exactly the same, they are not the same people. They are very, very different, and it's like that, for all of our kids. And so, certainly not wanting them to ever feel less than, especially less than a sibling. That's got to be a very painful experience.
100%. Yes.
So you mentioned giving them the tools so that they can work things out on their own. What are some of like I know that's like a huge, huge question in there, but what are just some of the things that pop into your head, like the most important tools that we can give our kids when it comes to fear of failure or resilience or any of these things that we're talking about, just to help them as they navigate through life? What are some of the things that we could start doing today that would help build them up a little bit so they can lean on those things in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And so the first thing that I would say, and this is important for us as parents, is to help our kids to manage their stress response. Because we want us as parents, as well as our kids, to be starting the day from this even space. Because if we are super stressed out and we're starting from here, and then we
Yeah.
hit a challenge, we hit a thing that feels hard, boom, we might escalate to the point of shutdown. So
Yeah.
we want to help our kids to develop this even baseline, and we as parents want to develop it ourselves. So I teach those that I work with a really simple technique that was developed by a physician in Boston in the 1970s. It's called the relaxation response. Super simple, but really effective. You come up with a word or a phrase that you find soothing in some way, and you breathe. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes later in the day. That starts to help to internalize what it feels like to be in that stress modulated space. And that over time will become our baseline. Super important to do that first because in doing that, we're inevitably going to come at things, even things that feel hard or seem impossible, from a little bit more of a modulated space, and it's not going to escalate us as much. It's going to make it easier to kind of ride those challenges like waves. And so that's the first thing.
And so you're saying, so we should just sit for 5 minutes, take 5 minutes and just focus on our breathing and a word or phrase that sounds soothing to us,
Hmm.
right? That
Exactly.
it sounds so simple,
It
but I
is
know it would be hard.
super simple. And it is a bit difficult, right? There's no like easy button for it. It's like
Right.
it's practice. It takes practice to integrate because what happens is all sorts of things start to flood into our mind, right?
Right. Right.
And we need to kind of not pay attention to them. It's easier said than done, a little bit abstract. You just really focusing on that word or that phrase as a placeholder to move all those chaotic thoughts of like the what ifs and the fears and the
Yep.
this and the that, keep those silent by focusing. And it takes time and
Okay.
practice, but after about a month of consistent practice, it's amazing what happens. Folks really start to develop that modulated baseline where it's easier to contend with those day to day challenges, those day to day moments of things that are feeling hard, difficult.
Yeah.
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 So that's
I can
that's the first
absolutely
thing.
see that, especially, and I can understand the importance of it first thing in the morning. I guess as a mom, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, mornings are so hectic. I don't have 5 minutes to sit and do nothing. But
Right.
but if I really prioritize that, I can see how that would totally affect the way I handle everything else that happens that morning.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So there's that. And then the next tool that I work with folks on in this domain, it's called the daily wins exercise. And, sort of our human nature takes us to the negative, like all the things that went
Yeah.
badly, or we should have done better, or wow, I was terrible in that presentation and it's just over. Um, so it's the daily wins exercise. So we can do this as parents, very important as well, but also having our kids do it, very powerful. Jotting down either developmentally, if they're up to it on their own at the end of each day, 3 to 5 things that went well on that day, or we can do it with them, if they're a bit younger. So can be some scaffolding there. But that exercise of intentionally coming up with 3 to 5 things that went well on a given day is really, really powerful in neutralizing our lens, or maybe shifting it a bit to the positive, helps us to naturally see, hmm, that was hard. That situation felt impossible. I didn't do it maybe as well as I would have, but there were some good things too. There were some things
Yeah.
that there were some positives that came out of it. Really powerful in helping our kids and ourselves to move into situations that feel like they're insurmountable challenges or that we're not going to succeed in. Helps us move into those areas in a more balanced type of way so that we can see our potential on the other side. We can see the possibility on the other side of that perceived challenge.
Yeah. And I can see how that could be very beneficial to the kids to be able to find the positives within themselves because like you said, we are so hard on ourselves. And if they can daily find a handful of things that they feel good about, I mean,
Mhm.
that's an amazing thing. Of course, we want our kids to feel good. And it's one thing for us to say, "Oh, you did this great, you did that great." But we're not always going to be there to do that, right? So for them to be able to do that themselves, I can see being really beneficial in a lot of different aspects of life.
Absolutely, so beneficial. And thinking about it, I wish that I had that when I was, in front of my fourth grade class trying to recite the Shel Silverstein poem, because I don't think, it wasn't really that much of a thing back then. So I did not do a good job, and I was very hard on myself. But, if somebody had sat me down and said, okay, let's look at this situation a bit more objectively, and can you pick out anything that went well?
Yeah.
And, that might have been helpful at that point and might have
Yeah.
helped me get over my fear of public speaking a little bit sooner. But in any case, these types of exercises where we're helping kids look from the inside out at what the situation was for them and pick out those things that actually did go well within the context of maybe something that was hard is
Yeah.
extremely powerful.
And I could also see that opening up just more conversation,
Yeah.
because I think about, the conversations I have with my kids at the end of the day. How was school? Boring. You know what I mean? Like just the same old, same one. And sometimes you're really, really stretching to get information out of them. But yeah, I'm thinking right now, I wonder what, because I'm going to challenge my kids with this evening. What will they come up with? And I'm sure that will give me so much more insight into their day that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise if they share with me. I'm guessing like this is one of those things we want them to share, but they don't have to, right? This is something as long as they're internalizing it is the idea, right?
Precisely, absolutely. And yeah,
Okay.
I work with some adolescent soccer players, and this exercise is huge for them. They do it on their own, right? They don't share what they're coming up with their parents. It's kind of like a inside out internalized exercise. Very, very powerful, and have seen vast shifts in how they're conceptualizing themselves as soccer players, themselves as students, just all of it, right?
Yeah.
Because the benefits of this kind of move across domains.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think those were both great strategies. And before we run out of time, do you have like one more little tidbit that you can share that we could stuff in our toolbox for later?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a mindset thing. I would really encourage folks, well, two things, to appreciate their own unique context. So, us as parents, and then helping our kids to do the same, and then never lose sight of the possibility on the other side of the challenge. The possibility is always out there. We just have to sometimes look a little bit harder for it.
All right. Well, Dr. Kate, thanks so much for your time today. And if you are interested in learning more about Dr. Kate, we will link to her socials. And you also have a book coming out, right? Do you want to tell us quickly about your book?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's called Step Away: The Keys to Resilient Parenting, and really is a book designed to be very accessible, digestible for parents to help us build resilience and thrive within our own unique context. Keeping in mind, there's no one size fits all. So we address that in the book.
All right. Well, all the links for that will be right below or above, depending on where you're watching or listening. So you can easily connect with Dr. Kate and check out her book. Again, thanks for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And thanks for listening. See you next time.